thousands of labor tenant applicants, there is still no end in sight. This is Hilton, a town in the Natal Midlands, about 100 kilometers outside of Durban. It's home to Hilton College, a prestigious private boys' school. At 253,000 rand per student per annum, the school, with its sprawling lawns and majestic colonial buildings, is reportedly the most expensive in the country. It's said to provide the best education money can buy. The school says that the Hilton estate, on which it is situated, was acquired through a series of historic acquisitions. Its 145-year history began when it was established within the Hilton farm.
The farm had been a voortrekker farm and called Ongegund. And this man, his name was Lucas, who had come out from England as a military man, had survived the wreck of the Birkenhead. He was one of the guys who managed to swim to the shore. And subsequently, when his military career came to an end, he joined the civil service and was a magistrate. And he happened to own this piece of ground, or he bought it. And when he and his friend bought it, they named it after a place that they had known in England called Hilton.
But alongside this opulence, hidden behind the school, lives a poverty-stricken community. We travelled to Hilton College to meet 4 families who are embroiled in a David and Goliath battle with the school for the land. This is Ubabu Mwelase. His sickly elderly brother is one of the 4 applicants. Mwelase takes us to visit the graves of their loved ones on land that's been a long-standing bone of contention. To get access to visit the sacred site, he had to get written permission first from Hilton College. This because the entire area is owned by the Hiltonian Society. Without it, he won't be allowed in. In fact, on the very place where Mwelase stands is the Hilton College Game Reserve, with wildlife spread over hectares of land. According to him, more than 100 graves of families, including his family, lie here. But with animals roaming freely and the dense bushes, the graves have become almost impossible to identify. These families once owned the land here.
Bonke beyilandela izibongo nje esinazo zonke nabakodlamini abanyengenhla ngala sasisonke nabo lana yamanje silwa nje sithi sifunda lo mhlaba ubuyise kuthina ngoba adusisiza silima sitshala ayikho into ade siyiswele.
For residents like Ubabu Mwelase, the history of Hilton College is a sore point. It's a reminder of the land on which they have lived since the 1800s but have now lost.
Lana kade kungakhona Hilton College kanozekela umlungu wafica ukhokho wethu lana mafica ukhokho wethu wathi ukhokho wethu etshela ukhokho wethu wathi ngifunela abantu bazosebenza la ngaphakathi.
According to him, when Hilton College was established on the Hilton farm in 1872, his parents and grandparents formed part of the workforce on the farm. Some of the workers then ended up working at the college. The understanding was that the black workers who had lived on the farm before it was acquired by those who established Hilton College would work for free in exchange for living space, the right to graze, and have cattle. Both parties, the college and the families, operated under this arrangement. These families remained on the land for many generations. When the 1913 Native Land Act was introduced, it prohibited the ownership of land by blacks. As a result, black South Africans on farms were faced with 2 options: absolute dispossession or labor tenancy, which meant they could stay on the farm if they agreed to work for free. The school's approach was to allow the families to remain on the land in exchange for their labor.
Ngeke ukuthi nina isikole sesiqale ngo1872 nini ukuthi ningathi umhlaba owenu nibe umlungu efica ukhokho wethu lapho ungekho izindlu eziningi la.
Now, under the Labour Tenants Act, the 4 applicants, Begindlela Mwelase, Mdeni Sikhakhane, Xegwana Mwelase, and Ndoda Mngoma, believe they can successfully claim ownership of the land. A Labour tenant is someone who works on a farm in exchange for the right to live on that farm and use it for residential grazing and cropping. The act was signed by the late President Nelson Mandela in 1996 and is supposed to address the injustices of the past by giving Labour tenants ownership of the small portion of land they live on. Ubabumdeni Sikhakhane is also one of the 4 applicants. He is now blind, can barely get around. He says for decades he's worked at the school.
Asezimaphihlombe kasebenza emahhovisi kwayimina ngiklina onke amahhovisi lawo ala ekhaya ngize ngikhukhele kuona amahhovisi ngithatha iposi ngifakele iposi yonke indawo laphezulu angithi.
The deadline for the lodging of Labour tenant claims was March 2001, and about 19,000 Labour tenants had applied for land ownership. But the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform lost most of the 19,000 claims that were submitted on time. The 4 applicants eventually approached the Association for Rural Advancement, or AFRA, a KwaZulu-Natal land NGO, for help. AFRA then wrote to the department to ask it to send the claims to the Land Claims Courts. The department failed. That's when AFRA approached the Legal Resources Centre to assist the claimants.
We decided to use this case in order to benefit other Labour tenants, because in South Africa we know very well that there are about 19,000 Labour tenants who made similar applications, and their applications were not processed by the Director General, and some of them were lost by the department. They are nowhere to be found. So we decided to use this case to bring this case as class action in order to benefit other Labour tenants who made applications.
The Legal Resources Centre approached the Land Claims Court to compel the department to explain how it intended to process the claims.
They failed to provide us with the records. As a result of that, we took a decision saying that we need someone to be appointed, someone who's going to be reporting to court and who's going to work with the department. So we call that person a special master.
In a landmark ruling in December 2016, the Land Claims Court instructed the Rural Development and Land Reform Minister to appoint a special master to oversee the Labour tenants' claims process. The court set a deadline of 31 March 2017 for the appointment of the master. Surprisingly, the minister is challenging this.
Unfortunately, the department does not want a special master, so it appealed against that decision of the judge. So the matter is, as we speak, is at the Supreme Court of Appeal. So we are required to file the records in July.
Mbenze believes the actions of the department show that the reality is that the department does not intend processing the claims. However, what has made the delay even more distressing is that many of the applicants are very old. Whilst the department has dragged its feet, 2 of the 4 applicants have since died. Ubabu Xegwana Mwelase died in 2005. 2 years later, Ubabu Ndoda Mngoma followed.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Le Mans Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Four families are currently laying claim to this land, which belongs to the Hilton estate, the residential section attached to the exclusive Hilton College. Ubabu Begindlela Mwelase is one of the four applicants, and he's the older brother to Ubabu Tanda Mwelase, whom we met earlier.
Ni intesilo nabo neyithona kwesithi asindawo sihlelile. Asebenza lasaqeda iminyaka sesithola impesheni. Ingekho nje isihluphayo manje hayi banathi shaka.
The Hilton Society believes the applicants don't have a valid claim. They argue that they were paid, thus making them farm workers and not labor tenants. Ubabu Skakane doesn't dispute that he was paid, but it was a minuscule amount.
Oh, sawuzikhola leyo madlala phoze leshumbu esisikhathi. Yeah. Kwaze kwaya phoze leshumbu kwaze kwaya phoze lofakolweni kwaye phoze lesihlalo. Lehlalo halo kuya kancane. Ayikho imali sasiyikhola phela. Sasakhola lutho.
We have many rich South Africans sending their children to be educated at the college. And at the back of this college are this community of labor tenants and farm dwellers who live in conditions of real poverty. So we have the face of incredible wealth, while behind it we have the reality of real poverty.
Glenn Farad, AFRA's program manager, says Hilton's argument that the applicants are not labor tenants is problematic.
I think that the Hiltonian society, like many other landowners, make a very basic calculation, and that is that the department will do nothing. And they have evidence on their side that shows them, as long as they don't concede to people's legitimate rights, that no one is actually going to punish them. So they have made the calculation. They have the resources to go to court to contest this. That is their legal right. But we can see that their actions are really fundamentally immoral and unjust, right? So they want to perpetuate this relationship where black people are brought onto the farm or onto the land or onto the college and provide labor and then leave, yes? And they don't want to really concede any inch of that land to the community.
The families say the Hilton estate initially offered to relocate them to an area called Howick, which is nearby.
Babethi asifuni indawo esiyithandayo. Bazohamba bosakhela khona. Sathina asifuni indawo thina ayikho indawo esiyifuna. Abayeke bathandayo ukuphuma ke la nekoliji. Thina sathi asifuni ukuphuma la endaweni yethu esakhulela kuyona, sifuya kuyona, senza zonke izinto kuyona.
Another concern is the closure of the Hilton Intermediate School on the estate. Residents say the school, which educated the children of the workers living there, left their children stranded, and they had to find schools far away from their homes.
In our minds, we were always sharing the land, even with strangers who were coming from overseas, only to find, as time went by, that they were now occupiers on someone else's land, namely the Hilton Society, who then built a school and gradually pushed people back further and further.
What's most distressing is that in a democratic country, the families are barred from owning too much livestock. They are not allowed to farm the land, and they say their movements are restricted. Before they moved onto these premises, this was never the case. Now they must abide by the rules of the estate, making life difficult for them.
Ifuthi mina ngisangithola incwadi ephuma kumlungu wala ngaphezulu royini ethi imbuzi zami seziningi kodwa zidla la ngaphansi azidli ikakha zidla la uthi angiphungule imbuzi mina seziningi kakhulu owayi ngoba phela imbuzi zidla utshani la ngaphansi nginomeli usongidusela zona labelungu basiphethe kabi basivalele zonke indlela la zokuhamba sinayo indlela makufanele sihambe kuthiwa asidry ngala asinalo ilungelo lokuthi sinqamule ngaphakathi.
They are in a relationship of unequal power with landowners, so they remain constantly subject to threats of eviction or actual eviction. Now, beyond that, it means that they themselves are unable to really secure for themselves economic opportunities and livelihoods, which is what the law envisaged.
The school refused an interview but insists that none of the residents qualified to be called labour tenants in terms of the Labour Tenants Act. Residents could choose to remain on the Hilton estate or be relocated to Howick. The intermediate school was a state facility and it was closed by the KZN Department of Education. The running of cattle on the estate by residents has always been managed within agreed limits.
Africa is getting more and more digitized and people have to navigate through an increasingly connected world.
I did call my bay over here.
At school, I use my Wi-Fi.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape.
Politicians already do use Twitter a lot.
It's both Android and iOS compatible.
A solar charged box that includes everything, the computer, the projector.
That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Labour tenancy applications are an important aspect of land reform in South Africa. In May, the Minister of Rural Development and Land Reform, Gugile Nkwinti, delivered his department's budget to the National Assembly. He said that his department lacks the research capacity to effect land claims.
We still needed to conduct an audit in terms of land ownership by race, gender and nationality. We have just concluded the latter process. That is now phase 2. However, there are still huge challenges because of gaps as a result of the absence of information in respect of institutions, such as trusts, private and public organizations and companies, as well as sectional title holdings. The source of this enduring challenge is
The Department of Rural Development and Land Reform said no one was available for an interview to discuss the status of labour tenant applications. Some, like Ubabu Zabalaza Mshengu, have been declared rightful labour tenants, but the delay in officiating the land ownership is taking its toll on their lives. At 103 years old, He lives on a farm in Ashburton in Pietermaritzburg, not far from the Hilton families. We met him on a stressful day. The hut he uses as his kitchen and eating area had collapsed, and he took us around to show us the damage.
Kungiphethe kabi ngoba indawo yokuhlala na ngoba uyabona bangangisusa la ayikho into engayenza ngifuna indawo yami engizohlalela khona engathi uhlutshwe umuntu.
Mshengu's father provided labor to the previous white farm owner many years ago in return for the right to live on the farm, as well as to grow some of his own crops and graze his livestock there. Mshengu then took over from his father as a laborer, and in 2007 he was declared a labor tenant. But to date, Mshengu still doesn't have the title deed for the 5 hectares he's entitled to. The delay lies within the department because no agreement has been reached over a fair price for the department to purchase the land, and so Mshengu waits. But while these legal processes move into their 10th year, he grows older and weaker.
Hayi phela mina ngibheka abameli bami ngomngakunika sabona. Ibona sebefanele ukuthi bakuveke ngoba kade ngiya kubo.
Rob McCarthy is an attorney specializing in land and labor disputes. He represents mainly landowners. He says government's insufficient capacity to deal with the volume of claims is compounded by a lack of finances.
If there's no money for the purchase of land, it's going to hinder the process greatly, where there are mutually agreeable, amicable solutions. As far as the the labor tenancy process in court is concerned, well, with the volume of claims that there are and the number that have been resolved in court, it's quite conceivable that it will take over 20 years.
There have been notable victories for some labor tenant applicants, but this has required persistent protest action. This is the Muden community just outside Greytown in KwaZulu-Natal. In December last year, these residents won their battle for ownership of a farm they had claimed since 1993. Lungisani Ndlovu was one of the activists at the forefront of the struggle.
Cishe ukusola ngo-93 ngesikhathi lomlungu lowakuthiwa uHillman walidayisela inkampani lekuthiwa Marina Beach. So itheme ilithenga yasithi yona nje ayifuna umuntu la. Kwaqala lezo gigaba-ke.
The community waged a struggle, forcing government to acquire the land on their behalf. At the heart of the problem was a dispute over basic service delivery. The residents say the landowner denied them access to electricity and water to motivate the department to agree on a settlement quicker. He blocked the municipality from bringing services to the area. In protest, the residents took to the streets, blocked the provincial road, even got arrested.
Salala sasabuya ngakusasa ngoba saphuma ngolesihlanu ekseni saphuma sonke mesithi siyaphuma athi amaphoyisa awusekuvaliwe futhi yilapho kwaqala khona ke kwale kuvala umgwaqo belebeza ke laba bomnyango bezokhuluma ukuthi hayibo ikuphi esingakwenza sisho thina cha inkinga yethu le ukuthi ama services awangeni inkinga ukuthi umlungu uthi kuseplazini so sinxenxa ukuthi department ilithenge phela.
Although they are still awaiting title deeds, the residents admit it's been a worthwhile fight.
Ngoba hlupheke kakhulu baningi nabangasekho akade babeshikashikeka abangakaze besalithola ithuba lokuthi umhlaba utholakale besekhona besabona.
At the same time, the victory has been bittersweet. The community is still awaiting basic services.
Kodwa ke siyabonga ngoba Nkosi yami sebesitshela ke abasiphethe ukuthi sitholile siwinile siyabonga kodwa manje asikalwini phela lokho okwenele ngoba asikakuthola ugesi asikamtholi imixhaso.
Ngicela nje nabanye bekhuthala ukuthi benangelilanga noma kuthiwa baxoshwa bengakuzama ukuthi behambe nje bengazange beshiye omkhulu babo bengazange bexhumane neminye iminyango ikwazi ukuthi bakhuthaze kuze kube lesikhathi sisona manje.
Asikhulumi ngejalidi yabo nje wasila kaNdlovu ukuthi sikhuluma ngale ndawo sikhuluma ngawonke lo 500 hectares ola eMarina Beach ukuthi sungowethu ithina sesinezwi la uma ukuthi khona umuntu ofuna ukuyokwakha lapha entabeni indlela idlula la kuthina nokuthi kuNdlovu idlula la kuthina emphakathini ukuthi cha nangu Mr Sorin so ofisa uzokwakha la ithina sesinelungelo ukuthi ungakha lapha noma ungakhi ithina sesinelungelo ukuthi kuyo yonke le ndawo ade ngisho le enomkhiqizo sifuna ukuthi senze ini.
The Mudan community took to the streets fighting for their land. But for labour tenant applicants like those at Hilton College, the struggle continues. They don't have the physical strength to mount an opposition against the powerful school that houses the children of the elite.
If we can join our hands together against the ills of our society, we can build a better nation. One youth, one South Africa.
Africa is getting more and more digitized, and people have to navigate through an increasingly connected world.
I did a call my bay over here.
At school, I use my Wi-Fi.
On Network, we tell you about Africa's technology and social media landscape.
Politicians already do use Twitter.
It's both Android and iOS compatible.
A solar-charged box that includes everything, the computer, the projector.
That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m.